Before this video begins, I'm going to issue a quick spoiler warning for Xenoblade Chronicles. If you don't want the game spoiled for you, well, I suggest you don't watch this video and gain some knowledge or play the game, gain some knowledge about the game from somewhere before you come and watch this video. So, spoiler warning for Xenoblade Chronicles. If you don't want the game spoiled, click away from the video now. Hello guys, Aiden Mars here, back to another episode of My Experience With. Today I'm going to be sharing you my experience with Xenoblade Chronicles. Now, I did have some issues doing this before, so now, hopefully now that I've got a new way of uploading videos, I, well, let's just say, should be able to get this out. I've got some music playing in the background from Xenoblade Chronicles. What you're hearing is the Gale Plains theme, so you got that. So, yet again, this game is an RPG. Obviously, RPG being a role-playing game, similar to Undertale, so I'm going to cover it in my 3 different points this time. I'm going to cover it in music, gameplay, and story. Not in that order. It's going in the opposite order. No, music comes second. So, without further ado, let's start with Xenoblade Chronicles story. So, the story of Xenoblade Chronicles starts off as in pretty much the battle at the Bionis' sword. Well, the Mechonis sword, or Mechonis Valley, I think it is? I don't know, the place where Galahad Fortress is. Pretty much what starts off, you are first starting Dunban. I'll get into Dunban when I talk about my characters little later. Which I'll also cover in the gameplay aspect and how all the characters work. Pretty much what's happening is that the Mechonis are at war with the Bionis. Mechonis, for all the mechanical life that live on the world where this takes place in, and the Bionis being where all the organic life comes from. Pretty much, Dunban pretty much wrecks a crap ton of Mechon until the power of the Monado overwhelms him, the Monado being the sword that can do pretty much wipe out the entire Mechonis race if it wanted to. And whoever the wielder controls it, the game says, the Monado bends to your will, taking words from the game directly. Pretty much, yeah, Dunban's arm gets hurt, and then the game picks off 1 year into the future. Within this year, not a lot of change. The Bionis and Mechonis are still no longer at war because of the Battle of Sword Valley ended with the Bionis winning. It's not really specified who wins, but everyone predicts, oh, the Bionis won, just because they had the Monado, which seems like the most logical option, but then again, it doesn't at the same time. So pretty much you start the game in a little junkyard area as Shulk being one of my favourite games. Character of all time. Yet again, I'll get into Shulk in a bit, searching for some Mechon wreckage that you're trying to scavenge for some parts, and then you get attacked by something. Then Ryan shows up and is like, "What's up? What, I'm Ryan?" And then then you pretty much introduce more regular battle mechanics. The first introduction of the battle mechanics is when you're fighting as Dunban, which is a nice touch. Pretty much you go back to the colony, discover that Shulk is running experiments on the Monado, seeing how it works. Then, let's just say, the Mechon attack Colony 9 again. One of Shulk's childhood friend, Fiora, gets killed. I'll talk about Fiora, like I said, in the characters part. Fiora gets killed by this faced Mechon, as the Mechons have come back, and they're back for revenge, as in they want to destroy Bionis, pretty much, as that's the ideal of the Mechonis leader. And pretty much that happens, and then Shulk and Ryan set out on a journey to avenge Fiora and take down the Mechonis at its core. And that's pretty much the gist of the story in the game, except for a massive plot twist that happens in the final quarter of the game. That's pretty much it, and I'm not going to spoil the plot twist, because to experience this game, this really is a game that you need to experience for yourself to fully get immersed in it. This game, like I said, you know how Undertale was my second favourite game of all time? Xenoblade Chronicles is my favourite game of all time. Like I said, this game, it's just beautiful, and you really need to play it to get immersed in the game. It's so good. And with the story done, how about we move on to the music? What is there that can explain the glorious soundtrack of Xenoblade Chronicles? Is it possible to even put it into the words? Yeah, it is. Bloody amazing and freaking beautiful. Xenoblade Chronicles, yeah, it's not my favourite soundtrack of all time. Yes, that would still go to Undertale. But it is such a good soundtrack. As in, it's my second favourite video game soundtrack of all time. Now, there are so many good blood-pumping and emotional songs with this game. You've got songs like Confrontation with the Enemy, You Will Know Our Name. Confrontation with the Enemy, You Will Know Our Names, One Who Gets in Our Way, Galwar Plains, McConaughey Field, Central Lab. So many good songs. And I decided to play You Will Know Our Names as I feel like it's not the prime of the soundtrack. Personally, I feel like Mechanical Ribbon was the best battle theme, but You Will Know Our Names is pretty much the theme that everyone goes to when they want to describe Xenoblade Chronicles. That's on Galwar Plain. And let's just say, if you look up some songs on YouTube and you're like into the sort of heavy metal orchestraic tracks, you will love the soundtrack of this game. Now, there isn't really a lot that I can say. It's just like songs up. My top 5 songs in this game, going from bottom to highest, are the McConaughey Field, Central Factory, One Who Gets in Our Way, Confrontation of the Enemy, and I actually have a tie for number 1, Mechanical Rhythm and You Will Know Our Names, as they're just so freaking immense. Like, You Will Know Our Names, the unique monster theme, and Mechanical Ribbon, the battle theme on Bionis. Like I said, there isn't a lot that can be put into words to describe how bloody beautiful of a soundtrack Xenoblade Chronicles has got under its belt. So, gameplay-wise, Xenoblade Chronicles is sort of a traditional JRPG, but then again it sort of isn't, as pretty much the main battle system in the game, that's what I'm going to talk about, and all the characters included in this gameplay section. So you've got main battle system and characters, so it's sort of one segment pretty much introduced into two. Like with Undertale, all you really had to talk about was like how the battle systems and the bosses come. This game, the battle system pretty much remains the same through the entire game, except when you get new party members, then you've got new arts to experiment. So first off, I'm going to talk about the basic gameplay. The basic gameplay is that you have 3 party members that you control. The party member in your first slot is the one that you are physically controlling yourself. The other 2 are controlled by CPU. Now, that's what I like about Xenoblade Chronicles. You don't have to constantly keep track of what each character are doing, because the CPU will do it for you. So you don't have to be like, right, I want you to do that, and I want you to do that at the same time without having to switch between characters incredibly fast. Nope, the game does it for you, and usually they actually have the character do the right thing, which is a shock for me. In certain RPGs, that usually doesn't happen. It's usually you control every single party member, otherwise than that, you have no input. So that's what I really like. Now the thing is, there is no item system in the game. Well, there are if you count the Collectopedia when you go around and collect things. But then again, filling that up takes freaking forever. But I'll get into that when it comes to my gripes with the game, which I'll talk about in my cons segment. So, pretty much, the game, you have your character will attack automatically. You don't have to do anything. The character will attack automatically. And the gimmick is, you know how most games have special attacks? Xenoblade Chronicles has arts. Xenoblade Chronicles uses these arts in a really good way of putting them into categories. You've got physical, ether, auras, and then healing. As that's what I just put healing arts in a separate section. I don't know if many people do, but that's what I'm just going to do. Pretty much, your physical art auras are pretty much arts that deal like direct damage to an enemy, probably usually based around hitting something with something. Hitting X with X, pretty much like hitting a Mechon with a Monado. Like, that is probably what physical art describing. You've got your ether arts, which pretty much are your magic. in the game. That's pretty much how we use magic and healing arts. Self-explanatory. Healing arts do all the healing. Now, on to the characters. So let's talk about the characters. So what I'm going to do with the characters, as this is part of the gameplay segment, I'm just going to give a brief overview of who the character is, what he or she does, and pretty much a basic overview of who they are. So let's start in what we're gonna start with Shulk, and we're gonna go down the line of what order you get the party members in. So, Shulk. Shulk is the wielder of the Monado. As you know, that I have talked about the Monado, which is the sword which literally will rape any Mechon, except for the face Mechon, until the Monado gets upgraded. But then again, it's still a beast. So, Shulk is an all-around character. He doesn't have many auras and ether arts, which is like the only downside to Shulk. Otherwise than that, he's got a good mix of physical moves, and he even has a healing move, which is shocking to me. When I thought the game, main character doesn't usually have a healing move. I stand corrected, the main character does have a healing move. Pretty much, that's all that Shulk really does. He's a physical attacking beast. The only things that he really doesn't do, he doesn't have a topple art or any auras, except for Shadow Eye and that Battle Soul. And I'm not counting them, I'm counting them as ether arts, because they've got the blue icon and aura as a yellow art icon. I'm sorry, I don't care. But Shulk has got a whole new layer to him. What makes Shulk so vile is that he's got the Monado arts. He gets the most arts out of any character at one given time. You've got arts like Monado Buster, Monado Purge, and Monado Shield being probably the best arts you can get out of the Monado, as they are so versatile and overpowered. There isn't really a lot that can be said. Plus, Shulk is my favourite party member, so yeah. Next up is Rhine. Rhine is a sort of tank character, if you will. Rhine is... well, the thing is with Rhine is a tank character that can deal a lot back, and he's not really one of my favourite party members because Rhine doesn't really have a lot going in. Let me turn my frickin' TV down. Problem solved. Rhine doesn't really have a lot going for him, as Rhine, like I said, he doesn't really get enough usage in the game, as in the early games he's like your second slot party member for freaking forever until you unlock Dunban as a full-time party member. But otherwise than that, Rhine isn't really that versatile of a character, which pains me to say because he has so much potential. It's just that the game didn't give it to him, which annoys me. So that's pretty much Rhine. Also, Rhine is Shulk's childhood friend, I might as well mention that. Next up is Sharla. Sharla is your typical medic. Sharla doesn't really have any damaging arts. She really only has arts which is designed to shoot heal bullets. But I really like Sharla. But I have one massive gripe with her. And that gripe, I don't know, whatever the word is. Problem. I'll just use problem. My biggest problem with Sharla is her talent art. Cool off. That every time you use an art as her, that talent art gauge will go up. And with that talent art gauge going up, to say the least, really, it's a pain. The more the gauge gets higher, the more time it's going to take for you to cool off. And yet again, it gets annoying when the CPU is controlling Sharla, as they'll only really use cool off when the gauge is dead full. And that just annoys me so much. The fact that Sharla, she has so much potential to be a good character, but it's just dragged down because of her talent gauge and her CPU usage. Trust me, if you were going to give Sharla a better talent art, Sharla would easily be one of my favourite characters as, like I said, she's got a lot of potential to be a beast. Speaking of beasts, that brings me on to Dunban. Dunban is sort of like Shulk, as he's an all-around tank. Shulk has topple arts, break arts, everything you could wish. Did I just say Shulk? I meant Dunban. I'm sorry. Dunban has so much going for him. He's so good. And his talent art is my favourite in the game. Like I said, as soon as you get Dunban, I suggest you use him quite a bit. Get used to him. See if you like him. Personally, Dunban is great for anything he does. He's great in chain attacks. I'll talk about chain attacks after I've talked about the characters. He's good in chain attacks, and he's pretty much good in everything else that he does, which there really isn't a lot that can be said. So next up, we're on to Melia. Now, Melia is your typical mage wizard character. Melia is a good character as all around, she is a beast. She's a glass cannon. If you don't know what a glass cannon is, it's a character that can't take a lot of damage, but can give a lot back in return. Whew. Melia is your typical mage. She is good at every little thing that she does, making her a viable, not tanking, but a viable damage dealer. Used with a character combined with Sharla, who has, yet again, quite a bit of ether arts, chain attack combos with Melia can get really good if you know what you're doing. So there's Melia. Riki is, in terms of personality, Riki is my favourite character. Riki is, yet again, a sort of ether user, if you will. And yet again, like Ryan, he's a tank. Being that he has a lot going for him, but the annoying thing that gives me a gripe with Riki is that he's frail as hell. He can't take a lot of damage, yet he's the first character in the game to get to 9 to the max health, which is why do you have this character? But then again, the thing is with Riki is that his main gimmick is that he can inflict stats ailments. That's really it. In other words, he can inflict stats ailments, and that's really all. And on to the final party member, we have Fiora. As I mentioned, Fiora is playable in the early game as well, but in the different form, as in Fiora's human state. Fiora, after being killed, was transformed into half Mechon, which actually did Fiora a lot of good. Fiora is sort of like Shulk and Dunban, yet again being a really good all-round damage dealer. But I feel like out of being an all-round character, Fiora does it the best between Shulk and Dunban. I mean, come on, if you can get her tension up to max in a battle, Final Cross is such a good art. And when you unlock it, I seriously recommend that you keep it on at all times. So, that's a quick recommendation. So, as you're hearing that I've been mentioning, let's talk about chain attacks. Chain attacks are pretty much the big gimmick, the big super attack. As in, the character you control attacks first, character in the second slot attacks, character in the third slot attacks. But what makes this so good for damage dealing is that, say like you use a physical art, then another physical art, then another physical art. The final art will get a ×3 damage multiplier on it, which is bloody great if you're trying to kill a boss. Otherwise than that, chain attacks are very self-explanatory. You do something big and that's really it. So, how about we move on to the verdicts? So, with a game that has great gameplay, great story, and otherwise than that, an amazing set of characters, and the soundtrack being freaking immense, Xenoblade Chronicles remains to be my favourite game of all time for a really good reason. So, overall, I'm giving Xenoblade Chronicles a 10 out of 10. I would give it a 9.5, but I'm giving it a 10 out of 10, just because There are minimal flaws that I can find in this game. The only flaw I can really find character-wise is fucking Juju. Otherwise than that, this game really... It isn't perfection. Nothing's perfect. But if people want to revive JRPGs, this is the way you need to do it. Following Xenoblade's steps if you're an RPG developer. And remember that just take a lot from this game and see what you can do with it. So, this has been Aiden Miles, and I can tell you guys that I'm really feeling it. Stay awesome, everybody.